I am thankful to have connected with you on this podcast. I want to ask you a favor. Please do subscribe, and by doing that, you help us to bring on many wonderful guests that we can all learn from, grow, and make an impact. This is Immigrants Making an Impact, the podcast. Today, we are so glad to have Angela Rakibs from the United States, Washington, D.C., right?
Yes, yes.
Angela is also called Favorite Daughter, which she will talk about in a bit. She's a business whisperer, a vision organizer, and a connection concierge. So we will dive into all that in a little bit. Angela, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Tell me your immigrant story. I know your dad was an immigrant, so that makes you a generational immigrant. Tell me about that journey and why we are here today.
Sure. So my father came to the United States from Greece. While my mother's American born, she's also Greek. So my grandparents on her side were also immigrants. So she's the second generation and I'm first generation through my father. So, I always think of his journey and I think, could I have done that? And I think the answer is maybe, no, I'm not sure. But he was one of five. He was the youngest. His parents died during the war. So he's 92. So he was born in 1932. And so all five siblings were raised by different people in their village. He's from a it's actually a big island, but most people don't know it. It's called Chios, Chios. It's off the coast of Turkey, really. So if you're looking at the map of Greece, all the way through the Aegean Sea, closer to Turkey, is this island. And the island is very much either people who are like seafaring. Mostly, if they're wealthy, they own the ships. If they're wealthy, they are captains. But if they're not, which is what my father, having been, not having parents, you can work on the ships. And so from a young age, he was raised by another family. And when when they took him in, he looks at it as such a positive. And I think a lot of people could look at it and be pessimistic. But he said they took him in, they let him go to school. I mean, he did a lot of housework, yard work, taking care of animals, things like that. But they let him go to school. And when he turned 16, he joined the Merchant Marines and he traveled the world on a merchant ship. He worked, and many of the people at that time, the men on these ships, they would send money back home, right? They'd send money for their families. And so he would do that. He said, well, this is what people do. And the captain of the ship said, well, the lady that raised you, she's got plenty of money. And he said,
I was about to ask you about that.
He said, well, that's okay. This is what we do. This is the right thing to do. So she kept the money for him. She gave some to his two sisters who were older than him. I think they were probably getting married and that type of thing. So she gave some money to his sisters, and then she kept the money for him. So when he came to the United States, he had a little bit of money that she had saved for him. And so, it was a really lovely family. They really treated him well. And then I think that's where he gets a lot of his generosity. Because I think you've asked about, what it's taught me. Even when he has nothing, he is probably the most generous person that I know. And so I think of that journey, that he traveled the world at 16, working, learning, and then to sort of jump ship in the United States after. I think he did that for somewhere between 8 and 10 years. He knew it was time for him to settle down, start a family and that type of thing. So he came to New York and started there. And then he found his way to DC he was a carpenter by trade. That's what the trade he had learned. He was a painter and a carpenter. And so he had worked for some people between New York City and Washington, DC. They would hire these workers to come do projects. And then he stayed in DC after he met my mother, and he started his own business. So that's his journey.
Okay, cool. You talked about your daddy jumping ships. What does that mean?
It means, he may or may not, we have a lot of immigration talk here in the United States. A lot of people think, oh, well, in those days, everyone did it the right way. They came through Ellis Island and there was, systems in place. Well, no, he just did not get back on his ship. He decided to stay in the US. He did it his way. And I think how somebody who had maybe an 8th grade education, who didn't know a lot of people, had to have the courage to say, I'm going to stay here and do this. And he did eventually become a US citizen. Not everyone comes by one path or channel. You come from different ways, and you come because you know that there's opportunity. He said he had opportunity to go to South America because his ships, he speaks fluent Spanish. He's Greek, Spanish second because he traveled through South America, and English third. So he said, he thought about Brazil, he thought about these other places, and he really liked them. He liked visiting, but there was just something about the United States that seemed like that's where you go to build that dream, and that's the story he heard, and he decided that's what he was going to do. And so he started in New York and lived there for many years.
So you already, I bet you got into my head. I was about to ask you, so your dad traveled to many countries. Why the
Mhm.
United States?
Yeah, I think he felt like that was the story he heard, was that you go to the United States if you want to, have a future, build wealth. We joke now with him, or at least in the last many years, about how, when we want to go to Greece to visit and things like that, he used to say, "Why would I want to go there? I left there." And it's like, yeah, but you left, for a lot of people, that's paradise. That's a beautiful place. It's not like you left, you didn't really leave war yourself,
Hmm. Hmm.
He's like, oh, okay, and we've been back, but it's kind of funny that, and I think this is something we might get to this. I feel like, there's nothing more American than being an immigrant who lives here. He is so proud. He's always like, well, I'm an American. He still brings up Greece. We have our culture and everything, but it's so funny when he says, well, I'm an American, or he says, in my country, and I'm like, this one or the other one? And he's like, this one here. You know? So
Oh, that's so
to me, it's
cool.
when people are critical of immigrants, I'm like, there's nothing more American than being like, I'm going to go there and make my dreams come true. And that's kind of what he did. So I think he just decided that's where he maybe knew more people, and he felt like it was going to be an easier route to go.
Good to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So Angela, growing up as a daughter of an immigrant, how was it like? Did you know about that word immigrant or immigration, and did it have any effect on your life, positively or negatively?
I don't know if I knew the word immigrant itself, but yeah, it had an impact. I'd say mostly positive, because it was, the funny thing is my mother being born in the US, but of
Hmm.
Greek heritage, she really wanted to make sure we learned the language, right? We learned Greek. We went to Greek school. She spoke to us in Greek. My grandmother, her mother, didn't speak any English. So she spoke some, but she mostly spoke to us in Greek. But my dad was learning English, right? And he's
Hmm.
still learning English to this day. So he would speak to us in English, and they speak to them in Greek so that they can learn. And he'd say, well, I don't need to learn Greek. I need to learn English. So I think there was a lot about language and just how we refer to things, and our ability to switch from Greek to English so quickly, or to hear him speaking both. And it doesn't phase us at all. But if we have friends over and they would just be like, I'm so confused as to what's going on here. Like that kind of, I think
Yeah.
language was a big one, knowing that there's certain things, that he couldn't do. For example, his best friend was our next door neighbor who was a PhD. He was African American, Mr. Walton. We loved him. He worked at the Library of Congress. He was very academic, very smart. He couldn't do much with his hands. He couldn't build things. He couldn't, fix stuff. So my dad was the fixer.
Hmm.
He, built things in both houses. He fixed things. He knew how to do all of that because he was a carpenter. But anytime we needed to call, the county or somebody to pick up trash, or to, we need new signs on our street, anything that required something, that calling somebody and getting it done, that was Mr. Walton's job. So the two of
Mm.
them together, just growing up and seeing like community helping each other. This one has this strength, this one has this strength. And if we bring them together, we'll get things done. And, I started reflecting on that when you sent me the email, and I was like, gosh, that's huge. Because one, again, he's struggling with English, he's learning, and the other one is prolific with it, and highly educated, and just the ability to see them come together. I would drive over there sometimes when I moved out, and see them just sitting, leaning in the back of a car in the driveway, just chit chatting. I'm thinking, what are these two talking about? But I think that's part of the story, is building community around yourself. So
Mm.
that's part of it. So language, and community, I think those are two of the big things.
Wonderful. So, talking about learning the language, so as a child of an immigrant, tell me about the importance of, learning about the culture of your family.
Yeah, I wish I appreciated it a lot more when I was younger,
Hmm.
because you're learning it and you're going, so it's been generations go to Greek school. They go after regular school 2 or 3 days a week. And they haven't really changed their teaching model. And it was always such a drag. And, we didn't want to do it. It wasn't fun. It wasn't interesting. But now looking back, I'm like, I wish I'd paid more attention, as I can speak and I can understand, I can read. If I had to write, if you forced me to, I could probably, the grammar would be off. But I think there's just more learning than just that. There's just some
Hmm.
cultural things that we just inherently have. We often joke that so Greeks follow an Orthodox calendar, and
Hmm.
so Easter is never at the same time as what we refer to as American Easter. That's what
Hmm.
we call it. We
Hmm.
don't call it Easter. So there's that. So our Easter is, sometimes 4 weeks after regular Easter, whatever you want to call it. But people don't understand it. And for us, it's so normal. Or even here in the US, right? We celebrate Thanksgiving. We do a turkey, but then we do all Greek food. And so
Hmm.
people coming over for Thanksgiving are like, is there going to be mashed potatoes? Like, I mean, maybe. Well, probably, but probably not. So just everything we did incorporated the sort of Greek culture into it. I wouldn't say we're super religious. We went to church during the holidays, and we take those cultural moments very seriously. So I think it's kind of immersed in your like Americanness.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of what comes to mind for me.
Okay, so if you could tell any immigrant child listening, is it great to learn the culture of your parents? Would you advise them to do that?
I would. I know it'd be hard to convince them because
I
kids
know
want to do
because
their own
I have them
thing.
at home and it's challenging.
It is. It is. I think if we do it in a way that is not forcing. And I'll
Hmm.
give you another example. So my mother is, like I said, born in the U.S., but she couldn't do any of the sort of traditional American teenager things. She couldn't go to proms. She couldn't go to
Hmm.
dances. She couldn't go to school functions. She worked in my grandparents' store. Any event activity she did was through the Greek community. And I think when I came along, she wanted to make sure that I had a chance to see all of it. So I was able to go to those things. And my dad, being more traditional, even to like my mother didn't get a chance to go to college. My grandfather said that women don't go to college unless you want to be a teacher or a secretary or a nurse.
Mm.
And my mom didn't want to do any of those. She did go to cosmetology school, and I could tell her story because she had to do something. She's like, I have to work. I have to do something. So when I was looking at college, my father thought I would live at home, go to college locally, get married, and that's it. And my mom was like, no, she's going to go to college wherever she wants to study what she wants, and then she'll figure the rest out as she grows up. And so he really didn't think I was going to go away to college, and that's why you said North Carolina at the beginning. I went to school about 5 hours away from where we live, and that was in his mind a little bit crazy and kind of unheard of because good Greek girls stay home.
Uh-oh.
And where I live, there's a university nearby. Why don't you just go to that one? But my mom knew I wanted different experiences, so was lucky to have that balance. So I think it's a bit of a balance. It's like showing us what that culture is, teaching us about it without restricting and saying, but this is the only culture I want you to know
Hmm.
about. It's really more, the world is huge. And especially, I didn't have the internet then. We've got the internet now.
Hmm.
It's big. They're going to see what's going on in the world. So celebrating like the best parts of our culture, I think is what helped us. It's like we love a big fat Greek wedding. We love a big feast, all those things that are part. And sometimes I have to call her and I'll say, is next week a holiday? Because I saw someone and she'll say, oh yeah, next week is whatever. And I, just have to remind myself of it. So yeah,
Okay, cool. So we are not supposed to force them. We just have to introduce the culture to them and make them enjoy it.
make them enjoy it. I think so. I think so. They may not come around until they're a little older.
Hmm. 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 And that's fine.
That's fine. Yeah.
So let's pause and reflect. How has the journey been so far? Being a daughter, being a favorite daughter of an immigrant. Tell us about that favoritism.
Favorite daughter. So one thing about my dad is he is funny. And again, I say like some people who maybe lost their parents and had kind of a rough upbringing might be bitter. He's gone the opposite way. He's funny. He thinks everything is funny. He's a big jokester, um, tells really good stories. And so he used to always introduce me as his favorite daughter. I'm the only daughter. I'm the youngest of three. And he thinks it's just hilarious. And so when I was coming up with a business name, that just my mom said you should go with favorite daughter, and I kind of laughed. I said, "All right, that's funny." Even my brothers are like, "I am not emailing you at favorite daughter. No way." So it just became a just a acknowledgement to him, and like I said, his sense of humor. I have all these videos of him just being goofy, like just funny things that he says and does. Part of it is his accent. Part of it is he can't hear in one ear. And so you combine all those things and you're just like, what is he talking about? But he's really so great. So I think that's where Favorite Daughter came from. And for me, it's like, yeah, I wish I had maybe focused on it younger. I mean, I've always identified as Greek. Even when people say something about, white people, I'm like, well, yeah, they're the worst. People are like, you're white. I'm like, I'm Greek.
That's so funny.
So my friends were like, okay, but also when you leave the house, you're white. I'm like, that's true. That is very true. So we've always embraced it. Like it's never like I've never shied from it. I've never been like, oh God. But I feel like I wish I'd studied more and knew more, and so now I do that as an adult. So I think the journey's been great. I think having the balance of my mom being kind of more Americanized, I guess I'll call it, and my dad being sort of more traditional was a good balance because you kind of saw both, and seeing the way he worked to build his business and to grow a family, not really having a lot of examples of it himself, I think was really been eye-opening. So wait, did I answer the question?
Already, favorite daughter.
Favorite daughter, that's me. It's so
Cool.
funny.
And shout
And
out
it's
to
funny too.
Daddy.
This is yes, and shout out to his funny jokes because he just some of his jokes they're so that's like a good dad joke, right? Those
Uh-huh.
goofy dad jokes. And so it is kind of
That's
it
what
makes you
makes
laugh.
life beautiful, right?
Totally, totally. It's like because also we say that the mom is always has to be more serious, and my poor mom is like, I don't know, I have to be. I'm funny too. It's like, yeah, but you're not funny like he's funny. It's different.
I get
So,
it.
yeah.
I have connected with many immigrant children, and then one thing that comes to the surface a lot is they talk about the pressure to perform. And did you have that? If you had that, how were you able to overcome it?
Um, Definitely there's a pressure because they always want you to have what they didn't have, right? So I think from my dad's perspective, so yes, you can go to college, but no, you have to go close to home. I
Yeah.
mean, that's such a restrictive way of thinking. And I know it was only out of concern, but I knew that I wanted to go try something different and see something new and learn. So I think the pressure came a little bit like when I said about my mom not going to college. She did end up going to school. She was taking classes, community college here and there. She'd been a hairdresser and then she stayed home as a stay-at-home mom. And then she went to, she and her best friend decided to get jobs. And they got jobs at a bank. And the banks at the time opened 9 to 3. She could send us off to school, be home when we got back.
Mm.
And so while it wasn't pressure, it was more like she wanted so much for each of us, right? She said, I just want you to go to school because I know how important it is. And she ended up taking classes. The bank would pay for her classes if she got decent grades. And then she ended up, it took her a long time, but she and I graduated from college the same year. And, she transferred her credits to a university. She had, the school said, you're close to getting an associate, the bachelor's degree. You just have to take a few more classes. And so we graduated the same year. And so I think, well, I wouldn't call it pressure. It was more like feeling like you were maybe having to fulfill some of their dreams a little bit. Right. So she didn't get to go. We did get to go. And I think that's a privilege to be able to go to school and decide on your career and not have somebody tell you what to do. So I don't feel like it was a pressure as much as like living up to, well, maybe it is the same thing. Living up to an expectation, right? Like we didn't get to do this. We want you to have this opportunity. So don't squander it. Don't just, show up in college and, party like a rock star and not care about, because that happens, right? And actually my grades, my first semester in school were not great. And she called and she said, turn those grades around or you're coming back home. Oh, okay. Yes, let me hunker down. And so I did. I mean, she taught us a lot of those really good lessons, which was like, look, if you want this thing, you're going to have to work for it. So put the work in, or, you have a different choice to make. So I think the pressure to perform was there, but I didn't feel like it was a weight. I felt like it was something I was shooting for. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah.
They always want the best for us.
Yeah.
Let's move on to entrepreneurship. So, as a
Yeah.
child of an immigrant, what motivated you to start your own business? You could have done anything, you could have been anything. Why entrepreneurship?
Oh, that's such a good question. I did the college thing, right? And I went and got a job and I was
Mm-hmm.
building my career. That's what you do. And
Mm-hmm.
I lived in New York City. I
Mm-hmm.
did a lot of things. And I think after a while of just kind of trying to climb this, quote unquote corporate ladder, which isn't really a ladder, it goes in all directions, right? You get promoted, you get fired, you get laid off your job, you switch jobs, you're constantly proving yourself. And I had a good career. I worked in advertising. I worked for big companies and I liked it. And then until I didn't like it. It
Mm-hmm.
was really the feeling of constantly proving yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, it's hard and you're not guaranteed. A lot of times, and especially in the US, it's like you got to, put your time in and that's how you get, this, that, and the other. Well, there's no guarantee. You can put your time in, you can work good, you can get good reviews, get the raise. And then if they decide, hey, you know what, we don't need you anymore,
Mm-hmm. That's
that's
it.
it. Right. So you could be the best employee. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, whatever the company decides. And so I was working at a company and I had a woman who I worked for Whole Foods, which is a big grocery store chain here in the US. And then I'd gone to another company, but I had a lot of connections at Whole Foods and a woman who had a product at Whole Foods. And she just wanted help navigating the waters. Like it's a very complicated system. And actually her product, she's was my very first client, is a shea butter product, which she sources the shea butter from uh, Western Africa, and
Mm-hmm.
she's Nigerian, to the US, and she makes these beautiful lotions and hair care and all these things. It's a great product, and her purpose was to support the women in Africa who harvest the shea butter and to help women here in the US with these beautiful products. And so once we met, and we just started talking, and I was just kind of giving her some advice and how we could do this, her brand and her marketing and all that. She's like, I think you have the entrepreneur bug. And I said, nah, I don't know. And then again, I took some time, I reflected, and I thought, gosh, my dad is an entrepreneur. My grandparents owned a little Greek market in DC, the only place before there were big supermarkets that you could get all of your imported foods from home. And I was like, gosh, I kind of come from a line of entrepreneurs. I just never thought of them as such. I just thought that's their job. And so as I started thinking about it, I said, okay, I could probably take a chance on myself. The worst that happens is I have to go get a job for
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. And the best that happens is I get to help independent businesses, small businesses, use the skills I have from working at bigger corporations and bring that to a level for an independent or smaller business. And that's what I did. And it's been 8 years. And my daily mantra is I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to work for myself and I want to have that independence. And it's, it's hard. There's the same hustle, right? Every month your invoices are a little up and
Mm-hmm.
down depending on the type of clients you have. So, but I knew I could do it. And now that my parents are older, one is 80 and my father's 92, it gives me some freedom to, yesterday I worked from their house, right? Because my mom had things to do. My dad needs somebody there now. So it's like, that is a huge blessing to be able to spend time with them now,
Mm-hmm.
um, because they're not going to be here forever. So I think of my entrepreneur journey just really like it came at the right time. I was kind of a little tired of the corporate thing and I can do it. So as long as I can do it, I'm going to keep doing it. So yeah,
Oh, that's so cool. Thanks for
thank you.
sharing that. Then my next question will be, so is it possible for a generational immigrant to start a business and succeed?
The succeed is the tricky part, right? Um, we like so in the community that I live in just outside of Washington, D.C., we have a really diverse mix of people from all over the world. We have actually Silver Spring, Maryland is where I live, is more Ethiopian residents than anywhere outside of Ethiopia. And, they came here in the 80s. And every time people ask for restaurant recommendations, in my neighborhood is a lot of Ethiopian restaurants, coffee shops and lounges. And then we have a huge population of Salvadorian people here and they have, restaurants and it's pretty amazing. So is it possible? Yes. And do they bring something kind of unique and special? Absolutely, because sometimes it's people say, oh, there's 20 Ethiopian places. I'm like, yeah, but each one is different. It's
Mm,
like they're each unique. They might have similar things, but they're doing it in their own way. So I always tell business owners, whether they're immigrants or not, that you're going to bring something special that someone else can't do. There might be 50 coffee shops, but not every coffee shop is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone is running their business the same. So I don't think it's easy. I think if business ownership was easy, I think a lot more people would probably just jump right in. I think that's the part that, I always have to tell people without dashing their dreams is that it's not easy, but it is possible. The thing that's the hardest is getting the money and the financial resources to do it. It can be so expensive, and it's all your money on the line because it's hard for people to get loans or grants and things like that. So, I do think it's possible, and to succeed, it's really building community around you. Trying to do it alone, I think, is the hardest part, because it's already a lonely job, and it's already very isolating to run your own business because your friends don't necessarily understand, right? They're going to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, or sometimes my parents think, are you working? Like, well, between the hours of around 9 and 5, I'm pretty much working. I'm on calls or I'm doing things. But I think that that's probably my biggest advice is to people wanting to start a business is really find your people, your community, whoever that is. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask for help or to say, hey, we're looking to bring more business into my cafe. Like, what else can we do? Because I think that's what sets apart a really successful business owner from someone who's just constantly in the struggle.
Wonderful. Tell me about some personal qualities or skills that you think have been made most critical in your success.
Most critical in my success. I have for me, Angela personally, Angela Rakes personally, I have a way of seeing connections.
Mm-hmm.
When you on my LinkedIn was like connection concierge, a business coach gave me that one. I thought it was pretty good. Is that like when I say community, it might not be a lot of people, but I might understand what you're doing for your business and be like, oh, who you should talk to. Like immediately I'm thinking, gosh, who else should be on your podcast? Is
Mm-hmm.
this person? So I think I always joke that I can't really monetize it or make money off it, but like I have a way of being like, oh, this person should talk to that person. And that person maybe should connect them to this. Like I love those connections and just being able to help people find, like, it's almost like I can see the path ahead of them before they can see it. It sounds a little crazy, but that's one of my skills is just really connecting the right people. And sometimes, like I was at an event recently with that woman from the Shea Butter Company. It's called Shea Radiance if anybody wants to buy it. From Lyle, I was at an event. She was there. And then I went to introduce her to somebody there that had a small business, a jewelry company. And I was like, oh, do you know? And she goes, I think you introduced us. And I was like, oh, well, I think you introduced me to that person. Like there were 5 of us there that we were all connected through myself and Funlayo. And I was laughing. I'm like, oh, yeah, we know each other because we all connected each other. So I think there's something about it always goes back to community, but seeing those connections and valuable connections. I don't even call it networking because I think that can be a little shallow. You go to these events and you network and you give your business card, but it's really making deep, true connections. So I think that's one. And then the other skill I think is like this resilience, right? Like I said, sometimes some months you're making more money, some you're making less. And you're like, God, how's this going to work out? But having a little bit of resilience, a little faith that you can do it goes a long way.
That's so sweet. Connection concierge. Tell me about being a business whisperer. What is
that's another one where it's just we all talk about, especially again, use the US as an example, support small business, support local business. What does that really mean? I'm on, my neighborhood has a Facebook group, right? And people complain, well, that place is expensive and this one is this. And it's like, gosh, do you know how much effort that person put into that business? Like, do you even know? So I think sometimes it's me communicating to just a general public, this is what it takes to run a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
This, and then on the reverse, when I work with clients who own a small business, it's really talking to them at the place that they are, because, you're not a big corporation. You can't be on social media 24/7, creating content over and over and over again. Like that's not sustainable. If you're running let's say it's a boutique, a little clothing store, you have to be the buyer, you have to be the human resource person, you're hiring people, you're dealing with customers, you're paying all the bills, you're doing all of these things. So for me, for my role is to kind of come in and say, okay, what are we doing that's driving the business, growing the business, supporting it? And what are we doing because we haven't trusted someone else to do it? Or we're afraid to let that go because if things fall apart, it's on you. Like, where can we see some holes in the boat that we can fill in so that you're not trying to be all things to all people? So I think that that's when I talk about whisper, it's like speaking to people from the place of their business, their experience, and then using my experience to get them to the next place.
I know that you have your dad's sense of humor, Angela.
I do. It's
Oh,
silly.
that is amazing because I love the way you coin your words, business whisperer, vision organizer, connection concierge. Okay.
Yeah. And we don't have to always be so serious, right? Like that's the other thing is like business is very serious. Like, yeah, but if you're not enjoying it, might as well do
What's the
something else.
point?
What's the point? Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So, what would be your advice for immigrant entrepreneurs?
Um, I say take it one step at a time. We're not going to the finish line today. There's a million little steps, a million little steps. My clients hate it because I say, okay, we're just doing the very next step. We're not doing the thing at the end. And they're just like, it's so slow. It's like, well, it is. But I think really being cognizant that it's a long haul. Stick with your mission and your purpose and why you're doing this business, and that's the starting point. And remember, there's a lot of steps in between. And I'll go back to community. Build the people around you that can help, that you can pick up the phone and just vent to, or pick up the phone and say, hey, do you know anybody who can do this? At the beginning of my business, I did all my own accounting and bookkeeping. I did everything myself. And it's funny because I met a bookkeeper who was like, well, who's reconciling the books at the end of the month? I'm like, I mean, me. She's like, what tools do you use? I'm like, Excel. And she's like, okay, we got to get you on an online platform. And she wasn't trying to sell me anything. She just was like, I know what you're doing. You're trying to save a little bit of money, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, I am. And she said, let's find, and it wasn't like she wanted me to work with her, but she was like, you need somebody who can do this every month, make sure everything is in order. Because how do you even know if you're doing it right? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I was just winging it because I was just getting started. And so I think having people who are going to be straight with you and honest and direct is so important, because your friends are going to be your best cheerleaders, and that's great. But they're not going to be the ones necessary to say, I need you to get a bookkeeper or I need you to look at this really with open eyes. You might have some good ones, but they're really just there to kind of, and they're not always your best customers either, your friends. They just are like behind you cheering, but they're not buying anything. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like you need a different group that's going to kind of help you along there. So that's what I would say. Take it slow, one step at a time. When you feel like you're off track, remind yourself, what was my mission and purpose here? Why did I want to do this? Why am I keep coming back to that? And that was the lesson I actually learned from that same first client. Was every time we felt like there was something exciting to do, like, oh, we could partner with this brand, we could do this, we focus back. Does it help the women that are sourcing the shea butter? Does it align with our mission and purpose? And if it didn't, it might be a hard time to say no, but it was like, now's not the time for this. Like,
Hmm.
let's focus on this, and then there'll be another point where we can do that.
Insightful
Thank
community
you.
and taking it one step at a time.
One step at a time.
Cool. So, Angela, what would you do if you knew you could not fail?
Think that if I knew I wouldn't fail, I would probably put myself out there more. I would probably be, more public speaking, more interviews, things like this. I think I would do more of that if I knew I couldn't fail. Because I think it's important for women to hear from women on their experiences. And I think I would do more of that. I never really thought about what I would do if I knew I couldn't fail. You're gonna have me thinking on
Okay.
that one for weeks to come. I'm gonna be like, what else? I'm gonna be emailing you saying, wait, I have another one.
Bring them on. Well,
Yeah.
I must say that there's nothing like failure. So go ahead and do the talks, go ahead and do the interviews. Whatever falls on
Yes,
your heart, go and get it done. You only learn and grow.
that's true. You're right. It's the failures that, bring us out of it. You're
Mhm.
right.
And what is the most important thing you do today to make tomorrow better?
Today, I have a few phone calls today with clients, and my sort of philosophy is I do believe that small independent businesses really are the driving force of so much. So for me, it's like being really focused when I'm on those calls.
Mm-hmm.
In this age of kind of short attention span and lots of distractions, I try to really be 100% focused on that person when we're talking, which was hard to come by, right? Because it's like the
Mm-hmm.
phone and this and all these other things. So I think for me today, it's going to be really being intentional and focused on the people I'm working with. And I think that's going to be a big part of what's going to make tomorrow better. I'm also making some muffins today. And I think that's going to make tomorrow better because I love to bake. So it might sound silly, but like I said, we got to have fun in our work and we got to do some things that bring us joy. So,
Oh, I'm smelling muffins and craving muffins already.
I mean, I can pop over to where you are. It's a quick flight, right?
I already invited you to come and take a tour in the Netherlands, so you're
I will
welcome.
do it. I'll do it.
So tell me about the legacy you hope to leave with your business.
Oh, I really, I do think about this a lot. I kind of dream about, that there are people who have gotten the confidence to run their business, people who feel like the thing they thought was, a hobby or a side hustle or just like this little dream that was burning inside, that they're able to get it out. I really try not to focus even on, oh, you're going to make this much money or this, those kinds of things, because if we make the money the driving force, it almost rarely shows up. So I feel like for me, the legacy is that I've taught people that you have this little dream, this little burning desire, this thing inside you that's like, I got to get it out. And that we were able to get it out. And success is defined by each person on their own. It could be money, but it could be that they've left a legacy. So for me, it's that sense of like, okay, being reminded that, oh yeah, Angela taught me that I have this thing, I really want to get it into the world and no one's going to do it like I do it. So I'm just going to go for it. So hopefully I help people with that confidence that they can do it.
It's time to invite our community to come and support you. Tell us about
Oh,
your business. Tell us about what you're doing.
sure.
What do you want us to know about and support you with?
Oh gosh. So I work with businesses in a variety of ways. One way that and I've been really focused on that this last couple of weeks is, again, knowing that small businesses don't always have the funds to hire a consultant to work with them. I do a group consulting. I call it the front burner because it's so easy as business owners, parents, spouses, children to put ourselves on the back burner, right? So I envision the stove top. It's got 2 or 4 burners, and we always put that pot on the back when we're not doing anything with it, and then it stays there. And then when we want some tea or some soup or something, we pull it to the front, we turn the heat up, and look, suddenly we have food. So I think of it that way. I'm a food person. And the idea is your idea gets to come to the front burner. If you don't move it to the front, give it some attention, and start focusing on it, it's just going to be sitting in the back forever. So I call it front burner. It's a small group program. It's 12 weeks. We go through a whole series of different parts of your business. So we do an audit. We kind of review what needs to happen. And what I found is most business owners have similar issues. Doesn't matter the industry. So that is a great way to kind of have a community, which I know, I've talked about a lot, and get some real attention on your business, your idea, the thing that you're working with. So that's one way. And then I also work with people one-on-one, just standard consulting. And then, like we said before, if anyone has a podcast or a conference, something where you want to talk about small business, you want to talk about entrepreneurship. I talk a lot about having boundaries in your business, right? You can't do everything all at once. Like, how do you set up boundaries for yourself? So those are the main ways that I work with people. They can find me. I have a website. It is Favorite Daughter LLC.com. I have that LLC in there. And if you go to the website, you'll see a lot more information. You can download I have like a checklist, business checklist, where there's something to do every single day. Remember when I said you have to move slow? It's literally one task a day. I created it with my friend who's a money finance coach. And it's literally, so I have people who are like, I did the first 5 today. I said, no. The idea is to slow down and really look at every single day, one task. All my overachievers, one task a day. And so for 21 days. So if you go to the website, you'll get that. You sign up for email. I send out a monthly newsletter, really low key, just kind of business tips and tricks. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. So find me, talk to me. I love talking to people.
Okay, so you have it. Angela is ready for us to scale our businesses and audit
Yes.
our businesses. So let's call her. She's just a call away. Connect with her on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well.
Yes.
So finally, Angela, please complete the sentence for us. Immigrants are
the backbone of every community, everywhere. Just the heart and soul. And when you meet them, tell them thank you for being here. Wherever they came from, they came to your country to build their business, to build their family. So tell them thank you and learn as much as you can from them.
That's the title of a book I'll write one day. Thank you so much.
Let's do it. I'll write the foreword or whatever they call it.
Gotcha.
The book for you. Awesome. This was so fun. Thank you so much.
Of course. I'm glad you came. I think that the community will learn a lot from this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.